What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Tacho here, and we're back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes. So today we got in the announcements the information for the upcoming Hall of Forms. So pretty cool stuff. We actually knew about the units beforehand because they were in the data mine. But, I mean, you guys know how I like to do. I like to wait for the official announcement before I actually cover this thing. So let's go ahead and take a look at the units we've got. So it's Fire Emblem 9, pretty much, Path of Radiance. So they are following a pattern here where the previous Hall of Forms was Sacred Stones, and this one is going to be Path of Radiance, and I guess that means the next one after this is going to be Radiant Dawn, and so on and so forth. So pretty interesting if you're interested in looking for a certain unit to show up in Hall of Forms. Maybe if you want to pick them up with the Forma Soul, then you would just have to wait until the game they're from actually gets their rotation, and then hopefully they are one of the units. Okay, but this time around, we've got all seasonal units from the Path of Radiance Valentine banner. Now, unfortunately, we did not get a free-to-play option here. All of them are banner summonable units, so no Titania or anything like that. Honestly, I had high hopes that either Titania or the Black Knight, or maybe even Ashnard, if they wanted to be real generous, was going to show up in this round of Hall of Forms, because it's always good for us to get those free-to-play merge projects as possible Forma Soul options, because they don't have IVs anyway, and that is the one downside, of course, to these Forma units. They're not allowed to have IVs. All of them are neutral. So if we were able to pick up one of the really good merge projects from the Grail shop, like Black Knight or Ashnard or Titania or something like that, that would have been really good for everybody. But unfortunately, they keep on doing us real dirty. The last Tempest Trial as well didn't have a free-to-play option. And I was low-key really hoping it would be Joshua, because Joshua's just really awesome, and I would have loved to have an excuse to merge him up to plus 10. But it is what it is, man. So, whatever. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and cover each of these units one by one. I'm going to show you guys a couple of skills you may want to pick up on them if you plan to use your Forma Soul to get them. And I'm also going to rank them in terms of best to worst, as far as which one I think is probably the most desirable to pick up with the Forma Soul if you do decide to buy it. Of course, the Forma Soul is not going to be for everybody. It costs 30 bucks, and that is real money, real life money. So it's not for everyone, and it's definitely not for free to play. But for those of you that don't mind spending money on orbs every now and then, it is actually a pretty good orb to money ratio, and it's cheaper to get the Forma Soul pack than to just go ahead and buy orbs in the shop. And if you want to look at it that way, you're pretty much just getting the Forma Soul as a throw-in at that point, and you're just paying for the orbs, which you can use on any banner. So, I mean, in my personal opinion, for the people that spend money on the game, the Forma Soul pack is a very good deal. Okay, so let's go ahead and rank the units in terms of best to worst. And in my opinion, I feel like the Valentine Ike is definitely the man to go for this time around. He comes with Radiant Aether, which is the only perf available on any of these guys. And it is a special attack, but it's a pretty good special attack. So I feel like that alone is enough to stand this Ike out. Now, in second place, I think I would have to go for Commander Grail. Mainly because this guy is just an insane stat ball. Like, if you look at his base stats, he's really good defensively. And he has speed as a dump stat. So it's not going to be too hard to build this guy up as a bait option. And then in third place, I would say, honestly, Sauron and Mist are kind of tied. They do have advantages and disadvantages over each other. Like, in the case of Mist, she's a Green Tome Cavalry unit, and there's really not too many good free-to-play options for that. So we have Cecilia and we have the Picnic Leo, both of which are kind of meh, at least until Cecilia gets a refine or something. So Mist really doesn't have all that much competition. But Sauron, even though I feel like Sauron is just a slight bit better than Mist, he has access to better inheritable tomes. Unfortunately, Sauron is a Blue Tome Cavalry unit, and that automatically means he has to compete with the Reinhardt, which a lot of people have already built up and are probably using. So I don't know if Sauron is better than Reinhardt, especially not if you're going to be hard-pressed to get merges on him. But he is slightly better than Mist, even though Mist has less competition in her slot. So I would say these two are tied. It's pretty much whichever one you think is better or whichever one you like the most. And that's pretty much going to be the one you decide to take if you are interested in one of these two horses. Okay, so with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some skills that you may want to pick up on these units. And we're going to start things off with Ike, of course. So for the weapon on Ike, you've got two options here. You could take Melee Bouquet, which is a seasonal locked weapon from the Valentine Conrad. And it's pretty much just sturdy impact built into a sword. Really awesome, especially for an armored unit, because they can't inherit sturdy impact naturally. So pretty cool. You could also go for Pledged Blade from the Waifu Oboro. And it's pretty much just huge fan, except in the sword form. So a really good weapon, of course. It gives you a light version of the breath effect. So going to be pretty solid for baiting and offense alike, since the effect of the breath ramp actually activates on both phases. So Pledge Blade and Huge Fan, just really good weapons. We're going to go for Harsh Command. You could go for a Rally Up or a Double Rally Plus if you want. But I like Harsh Command on these armored units because they're really hard pressed as far as movement is concerned. So if they can just support an ally, remove any debuffs and penalties on them, that's going to be really helpful. Alright, Ruptured Sky as the special. Now, unfortunately, this guy already came with Radiant Aether, and none of the inheritable specials are even going to come close to that. But Ruptured Sky comes the closest, I guess, having a lower cooldown cost and being able to activate pretty early. Now, Ike is a really fast unit, and he also comes with Distant Counter right out of the box. So you don't have to worry about getting Distant Counter on him. I would focus mainly on giving him stuff that raises attack and speed. So you've got a couple of options there, of course. Attack and Speed Solo 4 I think is pretty solid, as well as Attack and Speed Push 4. Now the reason why I'd recommend both of these over Swift Sparrow 3 is because they're going to raise Ike's attack and speed on either phase. And that's going to be really nice, of course, for him on defense, giving the foes less of a chance to double attack this guy. And he does have a pretty solid defense and HP combo. His res does leave a little bit to be desired, but not really the biggest deal, as long as you're keeping him away from units that would target his res. As for the B-Slot passive, you could go for Daring Fighter or Bold Fighter, both of which are pretty awesome inherits. He already comes with Special Fighter out of the box, so you don't have to worry about that. Bold Fighter would be nice for giving him a guaranteed double attack in the event that the foe is really fast and maybe they speed tie, or maybe he just doesn't have 5 more speed than them to get the natural double. That's where Bold Fighter would come in handy. And Daring Fighter is really awesome too because it comes with Null Follow-Up and Desperation built in. So just a really awesome armor skill there, but unfortunately, there's really not too many fast armored units that can make use of Daring Fighter. So Valentine's Ike being one of the few that can, definitely a good opportunity to pick that up for this guy if you want. And finally for the C skill, we're going for either Armored Stride or Armored March. Either one is going to work just fine. You just need a way to get rid of that one range armored movement, because it really sucks. So I would say whichever one of these two picks up that you prefer, I would go for that. Okay, so let's move on to Commander Grail now. Alright, pretty much in the same vein as Ike, we're going for Huge Fan as one of his possible weapon inherits. Now sadly, the axes don't have as many good inheritable options as the swords do. So Huge Fan is going to mimic Pledged Blade, and even though Huge Fan is free to play in the Grail shop, it will still save you 100 heroic Grails in the event that you already foddered off both of your Hinatas. So it is still a little bit of a cost saver there. Same thing with Hack-a-Lantern or Guard Axe, which is another good option for this guy. Both of those are available in the Grail shop, but you may have already sacrificed those units that come with it. Or in the case of Flame Emperor, you may not want to sacrifice that unit at all, because Flame Emperor is another good free-to-play option. But I would say either of these weapons are pretty good to pick up, just because they will save you 100 Grails in terms of skill inheritance. Alright, once again, we're going for Harsh Command and Ruptured Sky. I guess you could go for like Aether or Gale Force on him if you wanted to save the 20,000 feathers. But they are free to play and easy to come by in the future if you plan to give them to him. Whereas getting Ruptured Sky would demand a Byleth sacrifice. So it's just a more expensive skill that you could get for free. Now, unlike his son, Grail does not come with Distant Counter. So I would say those are going to be the primary targets for his A-slot passive. Either Distant Counter, the original, or one of the newer ones like Distant Ward or Distant Foil. Just pick whichever one you like the most. For me personally, I prefer the tried and true Distant Counter because Distant Ward and Distant Foil are not quite as good as close foils, since the split between bow units and dagger units and tomes and staff units are pretty big, and you may end up missing out on a counterattack in quite a few instances with that. So maybe stick to the tried and true Distant Counter. It is hard to argue with the stat bonuses you get from Ward and Foil though, so maybe something to consider. Okay, we have Bold Fighter or Odd Follow-Up as possible B-slot passives. Both of them are still premium level skills, and Odd Follow-Up is pretty cool. You don't really see it too often because it's only from Halloween Hector, but it can negate the foe's follow-up attack and grant yourself a follow-up attack on odd-numbered turns. So it's a pretty strong skill for both offense and defense. And for the C-slot passive, I would say you definitely want Armored Stride on this guy. He already comes with Armored March right out of the box, so you would probably want to go for the other armored movement option, and that is Armored Stride. Alright, so that just about wraps us up for the 2 armored units, so let's move on to the 2 cavalry options. And we're going to start things off with Mist, but pretty much, I mean, any of the skills you see on Mist are going to come back into play for Sauron. They are pretty much just carbon copies of each other with 1 or 2 stat points allocated a little bit differently. But in terms of attack and speed, they have virtually identical stats. The only real difference between these two, like I said earlier, is the inheritable weapons they have access to. So Spectral Tome or Madness Flask for Mist. Madness Flask is from Halloween Larachel, and it's pretty much just Fury 3 built into a tome, while Spectral Tome is built-in Panic Smoke, and you would get that from Halloween Henry. So both of them are pretty rare tomes and probably what you would want to go for. Rally Up Attack with the Ruse skill is a pretty nice combo. Ruse skills are really clutch for debuffing the foes and inflicting guard, because you can either have the unit that has the Ruse go for the rally and then support an ally, or have another ally use the rally on them and support the unit. So pretty versatile options there. In the A slot, you can go for either Attack and Speed Push 4 or Swift Sparrow 3. Either one is going to work just fine, just pick whichever one you like more. It's not quite as big of a deal for these cavalry units that they're not getting the attack and speed on the enemy phase, like it is with Ike, because Ike actually has defenses, and these two are just made out of paper. So with Swift Sparrow 3, just focus on the player phase with these two. And for the C-slot passive, you either go for Joint Drive Attack or Joint Drive Speed. Either one is going to work, just pick whichever one's your favorite. Me personally, I like Joint Drive Attack, but a lot of people prefer Speed, so of course, Joint Drive Speed is going to be a fantastic option. And just real quick, we're going to talk about Sauron's weapons, because, I mean, build-wise, they are virtually the same thing. So Flora Guide, you get that from the Bikini Loot, and it's going to inflict speed and res -5 on foes within 2 spaces. So a pretty solid weapon, actually. And debuffing the foes within 2 spaces means that your other allies could also make use of that debuff. So it's pretty cool for support, and just giving Sauron more speed and more power whenever he's going to attack the foes himself. And Juicy Wave, which you get from Bikini Camilla. It's just a tome with built-in Desperation, so definitely not too shabby. Being able to hit the foes twice in a row, that is pretty much Reinhardt's claim to fame, and why a lot of people built him up. But this Sauron does actually have a good speed stat, unlike Reinhardt. So maybe that could come into play, I don't know yet. Reinhardt never really runs into issues because he has low speed, so it is what it is. But there you go, guys. That is my impressions on these Hall of Forms options and which skills you may want to pick up on them if you plan to use your Forma Soul to get one of these units. If you guys are interested in picking up one of these Forma Souls, let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know which one of these units is the most interesting to you. So, as always, this is your boy Tacho signing out. So take care, y'all, and I will catch you guys again on the flip side.